Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name is Luke Basin. Welcome back to everyone who is already a subscriber to the YouTube channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe so you can see more great interviews, including the one coming at you right now. Always an honor to have a first-time guest on the show. This is an MMA fighter with a 4-1 amateur record, coming into Pittsburgh in 13 days to fight for 247 fighting championships. Brawl in the Burgh 25 on December 21st at the Monroe Convention Center. Super excited to have first time guest on the show, George Travinsky. George, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Luke.
It's really great to have you. I already said that you have a 4-1 record, a very good amateur record, a great amateur record, coming in to fight the local fighter, Chase Boyde, who has a little bit more experience in MMA, but obviously a 4-1 record is great. That'll be an advanced amateur rule set, which is super exciting. Before we get to that upcoming fight, it's a big deal. Since you're not from the area, I can already guide people to 247 Live, which is the app that 247 Fighting Championships runs. It's on any app store, and it's the best way to get the pay-per-view. There's a lot of links that come out on Facebook that are fraud and scam links for that happens for everybody. For pay-per-view. So make sure that you're getting and downloading the 247 Live Smart TV. All that's the best way. Then they can select your name, give you credit, and buy the pay-per-view that way. But before we get to the upcoming fight, take me back. I guess you could take me home country roads, but talk about your athletic pursuits, your sports prior to MMA.
Yeah, Luke. So it's kind of a common answer, but still important nonetheless. I started off as a wrestler.
Sure.
I started off as a
Tell
wrestler.
by your ears, George.
Yeah, a little messed up, right? A little messed up. But I fell head over heels in love with the sport, and it totally sparked my interest and love for combat sports. So I wrestled for a huge part of my youth, and then I made the transition to judo. Put the gi on for the first time, kind of shocked me and shook things up a bit. But I raised to accomplish a judo state championship with my time in judo. And then after that, I transitioned to jujitsu, which I'm currently still pursuing. And I've accomplished a world bronze medal for jujitsu and an American national title for jujitsu. And now at the gym I'm currently at, we started pairing the striking in with the grappling and fell in love with MMA a few years ago and started this journey a few years ago.
Well, that's a great background. It's one of the best ways to get into MMA. It also makes you much more well-rounded. You
Right.
made your debut back just about a year and a half ago now, so you've had, let me
Yep.
make sure, but yeah, uh, 2023 June. So
Yes, sir.
you've had. So what's the mindset of fighting so often? Does that come as part of your future plan?
Absolutely. Coming from the wrestling background, it was a schedule where we were competing once, twice, maybe three times a week. And I just feel better when I'm active. I feel better once I have the momentum going and I'm in the routine and really just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Um, you know, there's nothing like those lights and there's nothing like being locked in that cage, and it can be a shock to the system for anybody. And I find that the more that I'm out there, the better I perform and the better I'm able to make those decisions in those split second moments.
It makes a lot of sense. The looks, the timing. Also, it's important to point out that you're 4-1, but you're on a four-fight MMA win streak due
Yes, sir.
to dropping your debut as a loss. Take us all the way back to your debut. Obviously, a decision loss wasn't your game plan, but how did you process that from the wrestling mindset? Did you just see a lot of opportunities to improve, and then you kind of got that mindset of let's get back out there? Is that sort of what happened, or how did you come back from a loss to a start to then jump into a four-fight win streak?
Well, to take you back to that day, man, I felt like that fight was an accumulation of my life's work leading up to that moment. And I remember walking into the venue that day and seeing the cage for the first time and getting a little emotional. I started to shed tears of joy because I was so happy to be there in that moment. And I started to get ahead of myself. I started to mentally feel like I already won. And it's a huge accomplishment to make it to the dance. You know what I mean? But I felt like I got ahead of myself and I still needed to go out there and earn it. And losing that day has been the biggest motivation for me in my daily pursuit of this career because I never, ever want to feel that feeling again. Walking out of that cage without my hand getting raised, it shattered me on the inside. I went to that back room and I cried my eyes out because that's how much this means to me. And that loss is more of a motivational factor for me than winning. You know what I mean? When you are successful and you start to win more often, regardless of the sport, it's almost like a relief. It's like what's supposed to happen, So, uh, not wanting to ever feel that feeling again is what gets me up in the morning. It's what has me studying film. It's what has me doing 2, 3, 4 sessions a day. It has me eating the right things, not drinking, not smoking, whatever the path requires of me in order to be successful. I'm going to do it. And it's to never feel that feeling of loss again.
Wow, what focus and drive. Obviously, that's what you need. Let's fast forward to your most recent fight, June 8th. So a week from a year. You debuted June 3rd, and then
Yes,
you had
sir.
a bunch of fights, and then you had a title fight
Yes,
versus
sir.
Smith, who was undefeated at the time, is no longer undefeated because you won, and you won the belt for Maverick MMA back June 8th, 2024. Is your most recent fight prior to the fight that's now under 2 weeks away. So kind of talk us through that fight and sort of what's your growth like, your trajectory after that fight.
Yeah, so that fight was hands down my toughest fight that I've ever had to compete in. Artis was an undefeated fighter, knockouts on his record, comes from a great camp out in Bethlehem. So it was strategically and physically and mentally my toughest fight up until this point. And the fact that it was probably 5 days, almost a year to the day that I made my debut, I just felt like it was a full circle moment, a year almost to the day where I felt that loss. I just felt like, man, God couldn't have written a better story for this. You know what I mean? To lose an agonizing defeat and come back together and really compete in almost 4 or 5 fights in a calendar year to put together a win streak, earn a title shot, and then come out victorious with the belt. So I felt like it was such a full circle moment for me and a beautiful stepping stone, but not the end of the story, not the end of the journey. So, in spite of the fact that I was very happy with the outcome, a week later, me and my coaches are reviewing tape and analyzing what we did wrong and what we could have done better and why certain things did work and why they didn't work. And we were immediately correcting the strategies and the techniques that we used to improve for my next fight.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And now, after that big title win, your next fight is against Chase Boyde, Chase the Croatian Crowbar Boyd, who's a local guy. Going to have a lot of fan support from the Pittsburgh
Yeah.
area, clearly because he's a local guy. But you've mentioned tape several times, so I'm assuming because some fighters do, some fighters don't. You've mentioned it several times. So, what do you know on Chase Boyde as far as tape goes, without giving away game plans? But what's your confidence level coming in? He's 6-3. He obviously has more MMA experience than you. And why is this the right? Technically speaking, you just came off a fight versus a 3-0 guy,
Yeah.
and Chase has 3 times as many fights as that. Clearly
Yeah.
not undefeated. He is a guy that's lost, but he has a lot of talent. You probably know he's also a jiu-jitsu guy like yourself. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I have a lot of respect for Chase first and foremost. I don't ever want to take a fight against a quote unquote tomato can. I do not want to pad my record, in spite of the fact that these are extremely important to me as if this was a pro record. Losses sort of don't matter at the amateur level. So I do want the toughest tests. I do want the guys who have finishes on their records, whether they're knockouts or submissions, and I want the guys with experience, and Chase is that guy, and I have a lot of respect for him, but I do not fear him. And that's what's going to make this fight very, very interesting. I spend a lot of my time and my money and all my resources in film study, and with there being 9 fights for him, there's a lot of film out there. And I'm looking into everything. I'm looking into every single thing, know what he's good at, know what he's not good at, knowing what he has lost to, learn what he has won with, and devising a strategy and a plan to not only defend these things, but counter these things and capitalize on these things. So I feel that Chase is a great test for me for this point in my career. And I think we're going to make the Pittsburgh fans very happy on December 21st when we put on a barn burner.
Well, that's a great mindset to have. I knew that you would have been looking at tape. You're that studious tape guy. And Chase, I've got to see a lot of his fights. I think all of his fights for 247 I've watched. He's also fought outside. You know from trying to track down various things. He's been a bit
I
of a
do.
fight everywhere guy, which is great. And but he's known for entertaining fights. You're obviously coming in knowing that. For a guy, knowing Chase as a guy that, he's actually beaten Brogan Andres, who's now really good at the pro level. I'm sure you've followed that on Tapology. Tapology's made it, but he had a great rear naked choke. This is obviously public knowledge several years ago when they were both amateurs, and Brogan accelerated his career from there. I think he's 3-1 or 4-1 as a pro now. I've stayed in contact with him. Great guy. But Chase is just coming off a knockout, not something that used to be a part of his game. What are your thoughts on that? The fact that I'm sure you've seen the fight and he's starting to add hands. Is that something that you're also looking to level up from a judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling background to also have that well-roundedness yourself?
Absolutely. I've been putting a tremendous amount of effort into my striking for the past 2 years since I've started with MMA. Specifically working with privates on coaches and getting one-on-one attention, going early to practices, staying later, really studying the analytics when it comes to strategies and striking to improve, and specifically what my opponents do and what they don't do, and what they like to do, and game planning combinations off of those.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Clearly, at some point, and this goes for, I think, just like Joe Rogan, I think wrestling is sort of the best base to get into MMA.
Yeah.
But we also know, and this isn't the pile on, it was years ago now, but Ben Askren showed the danger of only, he was upfront with this. This isn't me trying to
Yeah.
badmouth the guy. He was upfront that he only did wrestling. There are stories out of his camp that he refused to, do any type of sparring. He was undefeated. There was plenty of guys he could have sparred with to work on striking. That wasn't his thing. He wanted to just do wrestling, which is fine. Everyone
Yeah.
gets to take control of their own future, particularly in a one-on-one sport like MMA. But I do think that at some point, a great striker is going to come into a wrestler and have to defend. And
Yeah.
a great wrestler is going to have to, or a jiu-jitsu guy is going to have to come into striking. So it's really cool to see that this is basically the 2-year journey of you coming in knowing now. And I would still say Chase isn't a pure striker. He's a grappler that has learned striking. So it's going to be an incredible matchup. Given you're like a coach's brain, given the fact that you're always studying stuff, do you want to make a prediction on a style of how you think you're going to win, or is that something that you're just going to come on to leave on on the back shelf until the 21st we actually see what happens?
I will not make a specific prediction, but there will be a finish. But I will not force anything. I will take what opens itself up. If there's something with the striking that opens up, if there's something with the grappling that opens up, if there's something with the wrestling that opens up, I will seize the moment under those lights, and I will take it.
I mean, again, you've got a great mindset, not only a great skill set, but also a great mindset that makes a big difference. Chase is also a great guy. Somebody has a similar mindset. Can't wait to see it. Something that we won't talk a lot about now because we're focused on the MMA is you've had some grappling only super fights, the pro super fights where were those in a cage? I know Chase has done somewhere it was in the 247 cage and you're
Yeah.
in the grappling. So what was that like to kind of rattle off some pretty impressive submission only type wins inside the cage?
Yeah, it was actually in a cage for an organization that I really, really love called Arena Grappling. They're located in Pennsylvania as well. And I actually got to compete for them prior to fighting MMA. So I felt like it gave me a real good stepping stone to the wall work and the cage work and understanding what positions work and don't work when you're up against the cage. You know what I mean? So yeah, those were probably my favorite, especially being the sub only format. I'm not a points guy. I do not want to win a boring decision by sweeping my opponent and staying there the entire time, you know. So their format being sub only was great for my game. And it was a really nice stepping stone for me to get into MMA, being in the cage.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. For wrestlers out there, grapplers, jujitsu, that's a great way. 247 has been doing what they call sprawl in the Burgh is their grappling side, brawl in their Burgh
Nice.
is the MMA side. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm realizing now on Tapology that all of those dates that we just talked about were all before your June debut, which makes a lot of sense. You were saying you're fully focused on MMA. I can't wait to see it. I've already mentioned how people can get the pay-per-view. It's got to be through the app. That's the absolute safest and best way to get it. But let's talk about the people that are in your corner, both physically, your gym, but also your supporters and those who sponsor you.
Yeah, I just want to give a huge shout out to everybody at Aesthetic Temple. Mike Madrano as my head coach and what he does for me, and all of his students and all of his members is absolutely incredible. I want to shout out all of my people from New Jersey. They'll be on the stream watching live. Even in my wrestling team, I coach youth wrestling. Shout out my Scotch Plains wrestlers. They'll be watching from home. And I want to give a huge shout out to Kitchen Cloud, my meal prep sponsor. They make sure that my weight's tuned in and everything goes according to plan so I can make weight and perform great.
Well, that makes a huge difference. I'm glad you have those supporters behind you. A special welcome and a shout out to all the people from New Jersey. I spent most of my childhood in the summertime in South Jersey, Cape May Courthouse, and so I'm more of a Southern Jersey at heart guy. Um,
Yeah.
because that's where I spent my summer. My dad had lived there long before I was born and then moved up to Allentown. But I love New Jersey, particularly the beach side of things in New Jersey is pretty.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the New Jersey people. I'd love to continue to follow you after this fight and going forward. That's something that I like to do, not just follow the local Pittsburgh guys, which I do the most of, but also to catch people like you and others as you continue your journey. So I really appreciate you coming on. It's 13 short days away from
Yes,
Brawl
sir.
number 25, a Christmas week, December 21st at the Monroeville Convention Center. Can't wait to see you. You're going to be taking on the very dangerous, very talented Chase the Croatian Crowbar. Boyd, thanks so much for coming on. You've been listening to Luke Basin from a Fancast with my first time guest on the show, George Travinsky. Thanks so much, sir. You take care.
Thank you, Luke. Have a good night.
You got it. You too.